What if you could learn a new language not in years, but in months? Master a musical instrument not in a decade, but in a year? Become competent in a complex skill like coding or public speaking, not through endless frustrating trial and error, but through a direct, almost unfair shortcut? We're obsessed with the idea of genius, the natural-born talent that lets some people absorb information like a sponge. We look at masters and think, they must have a gift I don't have. But what if that's the biggest lie we tell ourselves? What if the secret isn't in your genes but in your system? For centuries, Japan has been a culture that produces masters, from sushi chefs who train for a decade to just make rice, to calligraphers who spend a lifetime perfecting a single stroke. But buried within that culture of long-term discipline is a counterintuitive, almost ruthless method for rapid, total mastery of anything. It's not about working harder, it's about working with a brutal, surgical precision that cuts out 90% of the wasted effort. This isn't a study tip, this is an unfair advantage, and today we're breaking it down. Part 1. The Foundation. Kaizen versus Kakushin, the misunderstanding. Most people have heard of Kaizen, the philosophy of continuous, incremental improvement. It's about getting 1% better every day. It's powerful, but for learning a new skill from zero, it's tragically slow. The unfair method we're talking about isn't Kaizen. It's its rebellious cousin, Kakushin. Kakushin means radical innovation, or complete overhaul. It's not about improving the existing system, it's about torching it and building a new, optimal one from the ground up. Applied to learning, Kakushin means you don't dabble in Spanish for 15 minutes a day on an app. You don't practice guitar when you feel like it. That's Kaizen thinking, and it will keep you in the beginner phase for years. Kakushin thinking asks, what is the absolute most direct, high-intensity, immersive path to competence, and how can I structure my entire life to follow it right now? This method has 3 non-negotiable pillars. Miss one, and the system collapses. Master all 3, and you unlock hyperspeed learning. Pillar 1, the Shuhari Roadmap. Steal the form, don't discover it. In traditional Japanese arts, the path to mastery is framed as shuhari. Shu. Obey the form. In this first stage, you are a blank slate. Your only job is to replicate perfectly. You do not innovate. You do not add your own flair. You find the single best source, the master teacher, the definitive textbook, the gold standard course, and you copy it exactly without deviation. You are a mimic. If you're learning the piano, you don't try to write songs. You play scales and beginner pieces with perfect, robotic technique. If you're learning to code, you don't start your own project. You type out every line of code from a perfect example, understanding why each line is there. The goal is to build perfect neural pathways, to ingrain the form so deeply it becomes subconscious. Most people fail here because their ego rebels. They want to be creative immediately. This method demands you kill that urge. Steal the form before you own it. Ha-po. Break the form. Once you can perform the basic form perfectly, without thought, you are allowed to break it. This is where you experiment, you deconstruct, you see what happens when you change variables. You understand the rules so well that you can intelligently break them. The jazz musician learns scales, shu, so they can improvise, ha. The programmer learns syntax so they can debug and architect novel solutions. Li, transcend the form. This is mastery. The form is so internalized that you are no longer consciously following it. You create a new form. It's your own style, your unique expression born from complete foundational understanding. The unfair acceleration happens in the shu stage. Most people bounce between half-hearted shu and premature ha, never building a solid foundation. This method demands you live in the shu stage with fanatical intensity until it's utterly boring, because that boredom is the sign that the skill has been downloaded into your nervous system. Pillar 2. Mitori Geiko. Learning through stealth and total immersion. Mitori Geiko translates to learning by watching, but it's not passive observation. It's hyper-attentive, analytical theft. Before you ever touch a tool, you watch a master, in person, on video, in detailed tutorials, and you deconstruct their process. Your job is to answer not what they are doing, but why they are doing it at that exact moment. Why is the chef turning the fish now? Why did the programmer structure that function in that specific way? Why did the public speaker pause for exactly 3 seconds at that point? You are reverse engineering the decision tree of a master. You then take this a step further into total environmental immersion. If you're learning French, you don't just do lessons. During the Kakushin period, you change your phone's language to French. You listen only to French podcasts and music. You label every object in your house with its French word. You bombard your brain with the pattern of the skill until it has no choice but to adapt. You create a simulated Japan for the skill inside your own life. Pillar 3. Kimi. Decisive, all-out practice. Not practice makes perfect. The Western idea of practice is flawed. It's often unfocused, long duration, and low intensity. The Japanese concept crucial here is kime, which means decision or focus. In martial arts, kimi is the moment of total unified commitment at the point of impact. There is no hesitation. All energy, focus, and technique are channeled into a single, decisive act. Applied to learning, kaimei practice means your practice sessions are short, explosive, and 100% focused. You do not noodle on the guitar for an hour. You set a timer for 20 minutes. Your goal is to play a single scale sequence perfectly, at speed 50 times. If you mess up, you start the count over. Your focus is absolute. The intensity is maximal. This type of practice creates deeper myelin coating on neural pathways faster than long, sloppy sessions. It's quality and decisiveness over quantity and duration. You practice with kimi with a decisive finishing blow intensity, or you are not really practicing. The system in action, the 90-day Kakushin protocol. So how do you use this? Let's say you want to learn web development from zero. 1. Week 1 to 2. Mitori Geiko and the Shu source. Don't write code. Spend 2 weeks only watching the best beginner course you can find. Take insane notes. Diagram the process. Find the one Bible resource, the Shu form. Understand the landscape. 2. Week 3 to 8. The Shu grind. For 6 weeks, your life is the Shu form. You follow the course exactly. You type every single line of code they write. You build the exact projects they build. You do not try to make your own website. You obey. You aim for flawless replication. You immerse yourself. Listen to coding podcasts, read forums, change your environment. 3. Daily practice, kaimi sessions. You practice in 25-minute blocks of absolute focus. No phone, no distractions. Goal: replicate this function perfectly 10 times, not spend 2 hours coding. 4. Week 9 to 12. The controlled ha break. Now, and only now, do you start your own simple project. You take the forms you've mastered and break them to fit your goal. You experiment. You break things and fix them. You move from replication to application. This protocol works for anything: a language, a software, a physical skill, a creative art. It works because it respects the psychology and neuroscience of learning. It builds an unshakable foundation, Shu, through hyper-immersion, Mitori Geiko, and deepens neural pathways through decisive intensity, kaime. Let's deconstruct the psychology and neuroscience that makes this unfair method work, because without understanding the why, the how feels like arbitrary discipline. This system is engineered to exploit fundamental principles of how the human brain acquires and automates skill. The cognitive science, myelin, flow, and the ego death. At the neurological level, skill is myelin. Myelin is the fatty sheath that wraps around neural pathways. The more you fire a specific circuit with precision, the more myelin coats it, making the signal faster, stronger, and more automatic. The key word is precision. Sloppy, distracted practice fires messy, inconsistent circuits and builds weak myelin, or worse, reinforces the wrong pathways. The shu, obey stage, is a myelin-building factory. By repeating the perfect form exactly, you are firing the identical, optimal neural circuit thousands of times. You are not practicing playing guitar. You are practicing one specific finger movement with metronomic precision. This dense, consistent repetition is what wires the skill into your subconscious. The boredom you feel isn't a sign to stop. It's the signal that the conscious, effortful part of your brain is handing off the skill to the automatic, subconscious basal ganglia. You are moving from cognitive load to automaticity. The unfair advantage is that you skip the phase of ingraining bad habits that later take twice as long to unlearn. This connects to the second principle, flow state accessibility. Flow, that state of effortless absorption, is only possible when the challenge of a task slightly exceeds your skill level. Most learners never reach a new skill because their skill level is too low and chaotic. The challenge of even basic tasks is overwhelming. The shu stage, by drilling perfect fundamentals, rapidly elevates your base skill level. Within weeks, you have enough competence that slightly more complex applications, the early hay stage, become flow-inducing challenges, not frustrating impossibilities. The method systematically builds the foundation that makes deep, enjoyable practice possible. Finally, the ego death of the shu stage is not spiritual, it's cognitive necessity. The part of your brain that wants to be creative, to express individuality, the prefrontal cortex, is also the part that overthinks, hesitates, and gets in the way of automatic performance. By forcing you to suppress creativity and simply copy, you are silencing the prefrontal critic and allowing the motor and procedural learning centers to do their job unimpeded. You are trading short-term ego gratification for long-term, deeply ingrained competence. The immersion engine, Mitori Geiko, as pattern recognition bootcamp. Passive exposure doesn't work. Listening to French radio in the background while you work teaches your brain to tune out French. Active Mitori Geiko is different. It is deliberate, focused pattern recognition. When you watch a master chef and ask, "Why now?" you are training your brain to see the causal structure beneath the performance. You're not just seeing chopped vegetables, you're learning. The onion is diced finely first because it needs the most time to caramelize, which forms the flavor base for the dish. You are downloading the decision algorithm. This transforms learning from memorizing steps to understanding principles. When you then immerse yourself in the environment of the skill, the French labels, the coding podcasts, you are flooding your brain with the patterns and context of the skill's ecosystem. Your brain is a pattern-matching machine. Immersion gives it the raw material to build an accurate internal model of how the skill lives in the world. This builds intuitive understanding, which is far faster than rote memorization of isolated facts. Kaimi practice, the myth of 10,000 hours, debunked. The popular 10,000 hours theory is dangerously incomplete. It implies that time spent is the key. Neuroscience shows that deliberate practice, practice at the edge of your ability with immediate feedback, is what matters. Kaimi is deliberate practice weaponized. A typical learner might have a 60-minute practice session where maybe 10 minutes are spent at the edge of their ability, 30 minutes are spent in comfortable repetition, and 20 minutes are spent distracted or making errors. That's a 10-minute deliberate practice session disguised as 60. A kaime session is 25 minutes where all 25 minutes are spent at the edge of ability, with total focus and a clear binary goal: perfect repetition X times. There is no comfortable coasting. The intensity forces maximal myelin deposition. Furthermore, the short duration prevents mental fatigue, which leads to sloppy practice that degrades the very pathways you're trying to build. 4 25-minute kaime sessions spread throughout a day are infinitely more effective than one drained, blurry 4-hour marathon. This method replaces the grind mindset with a surgical strike mindset. Individually, these are modest skills. Stacked together, they make you a competent content creator, a highly valuable modern skill set. The Kakushin method allows you to assemble these stacks rapidly because you're not learning haphazardly. You're conducting targeted, high-speed raids on specific competencies. To prevent plateauing, you use interleaved kaime sessions. Instead of a 25-minute block on one micro-skill, you spend 8 minutes on skill A, 8 minutes on skill B, and 9 minutes on skill C. This forces constant cognitive context switching, which studies show leads to deeper learning and better long-term retention than blocking all time on one skill. It feels harder, but it builds a more robust and flexible skill network. The pitfalls and the mindset. This method will break you if your mindset is wrong. The fluency illusion. In the shu stage, you will quickly feel like you get it. This is a trap. Your brain is confusing familiarity with mastery. You must push past this feeling into true automaticity. The boredom barrier. The shu stage is deeply boring for a thinking mind. You must reframe boredom not as a negative, but as the desired state, the indicator that learning is moving from conscious to subconscious. The isolation problem. This can be a lonely path. You must find a community around the skill, forums, online groups, to stay motivated, but be careful not to let community interaction become a substitute for focused shu practice. The unfair Japanese method is ultimately a framework for taking complete cognitive responsibility for your own learning. It rejects the passive model of take a course and hope it sticks. It is an active, aggressive, and systematic campaign to rewire your own brain. It acknowledges that learning is a physical process of neural construction, and it provides the blueprint. It's unfair because while everyone else is wandering the forest, you have a map, a machete, and the will to cut a straight line to your destination. The method isn't the secret. Your willingness to follow it is. The method is unfair because it bypasses the floundering, demotivating, inefficient phase that 95% of learners get stuck in. It gives you the architecture of a master from day one. It's not easy. It requires ego death in the shu phase, immense focus in kaime, and obsessive immersion. But it trades years of wandering for months of directed, brutal, and effective progress. The secret isn't a magic trick. It's the understanding that to build something great, you must first be willing to be a perfect, obedient copy. Mastery doesn't start with creativity. It starts with theft. Now you know the method. The only question is, what will you master first?